Tonight we drift into the stars, where the fires of war burn eternal and heroes rise and fall beneath the shadow of greater darkness. The galaxy of Warhammer 40,000 is a place of endless struggle, yet in its grim expanse, the story of the Blood Angels shines like a red flame in the void. This is a tale of redemption, of sacrifice, and of a chapter that has walked the razor's edge between damnation and salvation. The Blood Angels are warriors sculpted by sorrow, marked by a flaw they can never fully escape, and bound to a legacy both glorious and tragic. As you rest, let your mind wander through ancient halls stained with memory, to battlefields choked with ash and the bones of the fallen. Together we will follow these noble sons of Sanguinius, from the broken sands of Baal to the storm-racked heavens, as they fight not only for survival, but for the soul of their chapter. In this quiet hour, let us set aside the weight of the waking world and lose ourselves in their story. A story told not with shouts of triumph, but in whispers of devotion, loss, and the unending quest for redemption. There are few places in the galaxy as scarred as Baal. When one speaks of the Blood Angels, one must begin with the sands of this world. Baal is not kind. It is not soft. The winds that sweep across its surface are filled with dust and poison. The sky is a pale red, stained by the twin suns that glare down without mercy. But from this harsh place, the Blood Angels were born, and it is here that their greatest trial would come. For 10,000 years, the Blood Angels have stood as protectors of the Imperium. They are more than warriors. They are artists of war, sons of a Primarch whose beauty was matched only by his sorrow. Sanguinius the Angel gave his life so that mankind might endure, and his sons, the Blood Angels, have tried to honor that sacrifice ever since. But they are marked by a terrible flaw. Inside each of them burns a hunger, a thirst for blood that can never truly be quenched, and sometimes, in the heat of battle, they fall into madness. The black rage takes them, and they see only the final moments of their father's death, fighting Horus upon the great battle barge. When the Tyranids came, the Blood Angels were already fighting two wars. One was against the enemies of mankind. The other was against themselves. The Great Devourer sent its fleets toward Baal, drawn by the promise of biomass. The Blood Angels and their successor chapters gathered to make their final stand. The skies were dark with the wings of the alien swarm. The sands trembled beneath the march of many feet. And still, the sons of Sanguinius did not turn away, and this tale is one of loss but also of hope. As we drift together into this story, imagine the endless deserts of Baal, the crumbling remains of mighty fortresses, the banners of the Blood Angels, torn but not forgotten, waving in the toxic wind. Imagine the silent halls of their great fortress monastery, echoes of past glories whispering through the dust, and know that in this hour of need, the Blood Angels found strength not only in their weapons, but in their hearts. Redemption is never given freely. It must be earned again and again, even by the most noble. Tonight, we will follow the Blood Angels on their path through darkness toward the faint light of dawn, a light bought with blood, courage, and sacrifice. Baal is a world that remembers every scar. When one looks upon it from orbit, it does not gleam like the green and blue jewels of other worlds. Baal is a place of dust and stone, of red sands and broken mountains. The twin moons that circle it cast their pale light upon a land where life clings by the narrowest thread. Yet it is here that the Blood Angels found their home, here that they became what they are. The sons of Sanguinius were shaped not only by their father's hand, but by the world beneath their boots. Once in the long ages before mankind reached the stars, Baal may have been a kinder world. There are ancient records damaged by time that speak of rivers that flowed between the hills. The air, they say, was clean. The people of Baal knew the gifts of fertile land and full skies. But that was before the dark times that came with the Age of Strife. Before the wars that burned across the stars and left whole worlds empty, Baal was one of those that suffered. Its air turned bitter, its waters dried up. What remained was a place that tested all who lived there, a place where only the strong or the clever or the desperate could survive. Imagine Baal's surface as the dawn breaks. The suns rise in tandem, casting long shadows across the dunes. The wind carries fine red dust that stings the skin. In the distance, the crags and ridges stand like broken teeth. No trees mark the horizon. No green growth softens the land. This is a world where survival is a daily battle. The people of Baal are shaped by this truth. They live in scattered tribes, hardened by hunger and thirst, by the constant threat of raiders and beasts. Their settlements cling to life at the edge of old crater walls, or hidden among rock formations that offer shelter from the storms. It was among these people that Sanguinius came. The Primarch, cast across the stars in his infancy, landed upon Baal and grew to manhood beneath its suns. He could have been a terror to those who found him. With his great wings, his strength, and his strange beauty, he could have ruled by fear. But that was not his way. The angel walked among the people of Baal as a protector. He brought peace where there had been blood feuds. He offered hope to those who had known only struggle. His presence was like a dawn upon a world long trapped in night. Sanguinius chose his sons from among these tribes. He saw in them the strength of Baal itself. He saw the courage that the world demanded of all who lived there. The first of the blood angels were not raised in comfort. They were warriors forged by hardship, made wise by the cost of survival. They knew the value of life because they had seen how easily it could be taken. The fortress monastery of the blood angels rose upon Baal's surface like a beacon. Carved into the rock of a great mountain, its towers reached for the sky. Its walls bore the mark of Sanguinius, a reminder that this was not just a place of war, but a place of memory and duty. Inside the fortress, the halls were lined with the banners of campaigns long past. Statues of the angels stood watch over the training grounds. The air within was heavy with the scent of oil and incense. This was a place where warriors were made ready, where the sons of Sanguinius learned the arts of battle, of honor, of sacrifice. Imagine standing upon the outer walls. The land stretches in all directions, endless and empty. Yet within that emptiness lies meaning. Every grain of sand is part of the legacy of the chapter. The blood angels do not see Baal as broken. They see it as their charge, their home, their sacred trust. They defend it not for what it gives, but for what it represents. The blood of Sanguinius runs through the chapter, but so too does the spirit of Baal. In these early days of the chapter's history, Baal was both cradle and crucible. The young warriors trained beneath the glare of twin suns. They learned to fight in the heat of the deserts, to endure the storms that swept the plains. They learned to master blade and bolt gun, to move with grace upon the battlefield. The blood angels became known as artists of war. Not only did they strike down the enemies of mankind, but they did so with a beauty that was both terrible and noble. To witness them in battle was to see the will of Sanguinius made flesh. But even then, even in the chapter's glory, there was a shadow. The flaw that would haunt the blood angels had already begun to stir. The black rage and the red thirst, those dark gifts born of their Primarch's death, lay hidden within their blood. The blood angels fought not only the enemies of the Emperor, but the enemies within. This battle would shape them as surely as any war upon Baal's sands. Picture a day upon Baal. The wind carries the taste of iron. The sun burns high, casting a harsh light upon the fortress. Within its walls, the chaplains lead the rites of remembrance. The names of the fallen are spoken aloud. Their deeds are recorded in the chapter's annals. The brothers of the chapter stand in silence, heads bowed as the words echo through the great hall. Outside, the warriors train, their blades flashing in the sun. The sound of bolt gun fire marks the rhythm of their drills. There is no rest. There is only the duty that Sanguinius left them. As night falls, the land cools, but the winds rise. The twin moons cast their pale glow upon the sands. The blood angels watch from their walls. They look out upon the world they are sworn to protect. They know that danger will come again, raiders, beasts, or worse, yet they stand ready as they always have. Baal demands strength. The Blood Angels are that strength. The connection between the chapter and their world is more than one of stone and soil. It is a bond of spirit. Baal gave them hardship, and in return, they gave it guardianship. They did not seek riches, they did not seek power, they sought only to honor their father's memory, to keep his light alive upon a world that knew so little of light. In doing so, they became more than warriors. They became the keepers of hope in a galaxy grown dark. As we close this chapter, hold this image close, Baal, harsh and beautiful, a world that asks everything of those who call it home. The Blood Angels, shaped by its winds, its sands, its endless trials, and beyond the night sky where the stars wait and watch, the Blood Angels do not fear the night, for in their hearts burns the legacy of Sanguinius, and that fire will guide them through whatever comes. The Blood Angels have always stood apart. Their skill in battle, their grace in movement, their devotion to art and beauty. These things mark them among the finest of the Emperor's sons. But beneath this noble surface lies a truth that cannot be ignored. The Blood Angels carry a curse, one written into their very blood. It is a curse that follows them from the moment they rise as Space Marines until the day they fall in battle. This is the flaw that they can never escape. The curse was born in the final moments of the Great Betrayal. The Horus heresy tore the galaxy apart. Brother turned against brother, worlds burned. At the heart of that storm stood Sanguinius, the angel, primarch of the Blood Angels. He fought not for glory, but for duty. When the traitor Horus opened the gates of the War Master's flagship, it was Sanguinius who stepped forward. He faced Horus alone, knowing what waited. The duel was short, brutal, and tragic. Sanguinius, the brightest of the Emperor's sons, fell to Horus's hand. His death was not only the loss of a hero, it was the breaking of something deep within his sons. The death of Sanguinius did more than take their father. It shattered the bond that held the Blood Angels to the light. From that day, the Black Rage and the Red Thirst became their companions. The Black Rage is more than fury. It is a storm of memory that blinds the mind. A warrior caught in its grip no longer sees the enemy before him. Instead, he sees through the eyes of Sanguinius. He sees the final battle aboard the Vengeful Spirit, the faces of brothers lost, the final charge against Horus, the pain of betrayal and the agony of death. To fall to the Black Rage is to become lost in this vision, trapped in the past. A warrior in the grip of the rage fights with unmatched ferocity, but he is no longer truly himself. His life ends in battle, his mind already gone to the final moments of the angel. The Red Thirst is no less cruel. It is a hunger that gnaws at the soul, a need for blood that no feast can satisfy. The Blood Angels feel this thirst in their bones. It is always there, lurking beneath the surface. In battle it stirs stronger. The scent of blood, the rush of combat awaken the craving. It is said that the Blood Angels fight with beauty and precision. But there are times when the thirst takes hold, and the line between grace and savagery fades. A brother who gives in becomes something they all fear, a predator driven not by duty, but by the need to feed the hunger within. The Blood Angels have fought these curses for 10,000 years. They have built their rituals, their chapels, their rites of remembrance to guard against them. But no wall can keep out what lives in the blood. No prayer can silence the voice that calls from within. The flaw is a shadow that walks with each of them, from the youngest neophyte to the oldest brother. It binds them together as surely as any oath. It reminds them that their path is one of constant struggle, both without and within. Picture the halls of the fortress monastery on Baal. The walls bear the marks of history. Banners hang in honor of the fallen. Statues of Sanguinius stand watch, his wings spread wide, his gaze full of sorrow and hope. Here the Blood Angels come to reflect. They kneel before the shrines, seeking strength. The chaplains walk among them, speaking words of duty and faith. But always, in the quiet moments, the flaw makes itself known. A tremor in the hand, a shadow in the eye, a whisper in the mind, the reminder that the blood sings with hunger and grief. The Death Company is where the Black Rage claims its due. Those who fall to the Rage are gathered, marked by black armor and red crosses. They are honored, for they carry the burden that might have fallen on any of their brothers. In battle, they are unleashed where the fighting is fiercest. They charge with fury, seeking an end that will bring peace. To serve in the Death Company is to walk a path with no return. But it is a path that the Blood Angels accept, for it spares the chapter from the full weight of the curse. The Red Thirst is fought in silence. The brothers of the chapter do not speak often of it. They master themselves as best they can. They paint, they sculpt, they build. They create beauty to hold back the hunger. Art and war are their weapons against the thirst. The Blood Angels seek to rise above the beast within, but they know that one day the thirst may claim them. That knowledge makes every victory bittersweet. Every battle fought is a battle won against the enemy within as much as the enemy without. Imagine now a Blood Angel standing upon the walls of the fortress at dusk. The sun set, casting long shadows across the sands. The twin moons rise. The wind carries the scent of dust and ash. The warrior watches the horizon, alert for danger, but in his heart he also watches for the stir of the curse. The Blood Angels are noble not because they are free of weakness, but because they face it with open eyes. They do not hide from what they are. They stand each day upon the edge of the abyss, and they choose to serve, to protect, to endure. When word came of the Tyranid threat, the Blood Angels felt the weight of the flaw more keenly than ever. The swarm would test them as no foe had before, not just in strength, but in will. The endless hunger of the Tyranids echoed the hunger within the Blood Angels. The chapter knew that to fight this foe would be to fight their own reflection. The coming war would not only be for the survival of Baal, it would be for the survival of the chapter's soul. The Blood Angels gathered upon Baal's sands, their hearts heavy with what was to come. The chaplain spoke of Sanguinius, of duty, of the Emperor's light. The brothers of the Death Company prepared for their final battle. The artists laid down their tools. The warriors checked their weapons. All knew the fight ahead would decide more than life or death. It would decide if they could rise above the floor one more time, if they could prove to the galaxy and to themselves that the blood of Sanguinius still carried light, even beneath the shadow of the curse. As this chapter closes, let the image stay with you. The Blood Angels, proud and strong, standing upon the edge of ruin. They carry a burden no other chapter shares, but they do so with heads held high, with hearts full of purpose. The flaw may follow them always, but it does not define them. Their deeds do. Baal had long stood as a symbol of resilience. The Red Sands had seen the rise of Sanguinius, the forging of the Blood Angels, and the many battles that shaped the chapter's fate. But as the Tyranids drew near, a different kind of shadow crept across the world. It was not the shadow of a single enemy or a single fleet. It was the shadow of the great devourer itself, a hunger so vast, so consuming that it seemed to darken the stars. The first signs were easy to miss: a system gone silent, a beacon that no longer answered, a trade route that failed to send its ships. The Imperium is vast, and such losses are not rare. But for those who watched the stars closely, the pattern became clear. A force was moving through space, a force that left nothing behind. Planets once rich with life were reduced to bare rock, every scrap of biomass drawn into the endless hunger of the swarm. High Fleet Leviathan had sent one of its great arms toward Baal, and with it came doom. The Blood Angels received the warnings. Scouts and astropaths brought news of worlds lost. The chapter gathered what knowledge it could, piecing together the path of destruction. It was not a question of if the Tyranids would come, it was a question of when. Baal stood directly in their path. The Blood Angels did not flinch. This was the trial they had been forged to face. Imagine the void beyond Baal. A sea of stars stretches in all directions. And then on the edge of that sea the swarm appears. At first it is little more than shadows against the starlight. Shapes that drift closer, slow and sure, but as the days pass, the shapes grow. The bioships of the Tyranids fill the dark, vast and terrible, each one a living weapon grown for destruction. There are no lights upon them, no signals of peace. They come not to conquer, but to consume. The fortress monastery of the Blood Angels became a hive of activity. The chapter's warriors made ready for what was to come. The walls were strengthened, the great gates sealed, the armories opened, and weapons of every kind were prepared for battle. The sanguinary guard, clad in their golden armor, stood as the chapter's bright heart. The Death Company, marked in black, prepared to unleash the fury of the Black Rage upon the swarm. The dreadnoughts, ancient and mighty, were awakened from their slumber. Each step they took echoed through the halls, a reminder of the chapter's long history and unbroken will. The successor chapters answered the call, the flesh-tearers known for their ferocity, the blood-drinkers bound by the same flawed blood, the angels vermilion, the carmine blades, and others. They came to Baal, knowing the cost. The sons of Sanguinius would stand together. The sands of Baal would see their blood before they saw defeat. The Tyranids approached without haste. Their advance was measured, as if they knew that nothing could stop them. The great devourer did not rush. It did not fear. It consumed at its own pace, certain that all would fall in time. The bioships closed upon Baal like jaws, the stars dimmed beneath their shadow. The defenders watched and waited, every heart steady. The Blood Angels had faced many foes, but none like this. The Tyranids did not reason, they did not speak, they did not seek surrender or terms, they sought only to feed. The skies above Baal became fields of fire. The orbital defenses opened up, hurling shot and shell at the bioships. Great void battles raged as the chapter's fleet engaged the swarm. The Tyranids answered with their living weapons. They hurled spores and bioplasma, tearing through armor and hull. The void was filled with wreckage and flame, but still the swarm pressed on. Picture Baal beneath this storm. The twin suns cast their harsh light upon the sands, but the skies burned brighter with the fire of the battle above. The people of Baal's scattered tribes watched from afar, knowing that their fate was bound to that of the angels who protected them. They saw the streaks of flame as ships fell. They felt the tremor of impacts as the first spores reached the surface. The land began to change. Wherever the Tyranid spores touched down, they set about reshaping the world. Strange growth spread across the sands, alien in form and purpose. Towers of chitin and flesh rose where once there had been only stone. The air grew thick with the smell of rot and the tang of bioacids. The Tyranids did not merely invade, they remade the world to suit their need. The Blood Angels met them with fire and blade. Each fortress, each outpost became a point of resistance. The chapter fought not to win, for victory against such a force seemed beyond hope. They fought to hold, to delay, to deny the swarm its feast for as long as they could. The sands of Baal became a battlefield without end. The red dust was stained darker with the blood of both defender and invader. The Death Company charged into the thick of the swarm. Driven by the visions of the Black Rage, they fought with a fury unmatched. Each one saw not the Tyranids before him, but the traitors who had slain Sanguinius. They fought as their father had fought, with no thought for themselves. Around them, the sanguinary guard moved with purpose, seeking to hold the line where it threatened to break. The Tyranids pressed harder. Waves of gaunts, warriors, and monstrous beasts hurled themselves against the defenses. The ground shook beneath their numbers. The skies rained death as spore mines and biobombs burst among the defenders. But the Blood Angels did not yield. Every step the swarm gained was paid for in blood. Every breach in the line was sealed with sacrifice. As the chapter fought, the shadow of the great devourer loomed ever larger. The bioships drew closer, vast shapes against the void. The defenders knew that their time was measured. Baal's moons had already fallen. Baal Prime burned beneath the claws of the swarm. Baal Secundus was silent, lost. Baal itself remained, a lone light in the dark. In the midst of this, the Blood Angels found strength not only in themselves, but in each other. The brotherhood of the chapter, the bond of shared blood and shared burden, held them firm. The successor chapters fought as one with the sons of Baal. The names of Sanguinius and the Emperor were spoken upon the winds. The sands bore witness to their courage. As this chapter closes, let the image remain clear. The blood angels, proud and unbroken, stand beneath the shadow of the devourer. The stars above them burn with the fire of war. The sands beneath them tremble with the weight of the swarm. The outcome is uncertain, but their purpose is not. They will fight, they will endure, they will honor their father's name. The sands of Baal had seen war before. They had known the tread of armored boots, the roar of bolters, the clash of blades. Yet never in all the chapter's long history had the ground felt so heavy beneath their feet. Never had the air been so thick with ash and the promise of death. This was not a battle like those fought in the past. This was not a war for glory or conquest or honor alone. This was survival at its most pure and raw. Baal stood upon the edge of ruin, and the blood angels knew it. The sky above the fortress was a canvas of fire. The twin suns fought to cast their light through the haze of smoke that rose from the burning wreckage of the chapter's fleet. Pieces of voidcraft, both imperial and alien, fell to the sands in showers of flame. The Tyrannid bioships closed upon the world, vast and silent. No sound crossed the void between ship and soil, but their presence was deafening in the hearts of those who watched the heavens. The great devourer had come to claim Baal. Within the walls of the fortress monastery, the blood angels made ready. The great gates were sealed, reinforced with layer upon layer of ceramite and adamantium. The banners of the chapter hung from the towers, torn and scorched but unbowed. Every brother who could bear arms took his place along the walls or at the gates. The sanguinary guard, golden and resolute, prepared to lead the counter-assaults where the line would break. The chaplains walked the battlements, offering words of faith and memory, their voices steady against the rising storm. The death company, clad in black and marked by red, waited in silence, knowing their final battle had come. Picture the parade ground at the heart of the fortress. The assembled warriors stand shoulder to shoulder, their armor scarred but ready. The sound of war gear being checked, blades sharpened and bolters loaded fills the air. There is no panic, there is no fear. The blood angels understand what waits beyond the walls. They face it not as doomed men, but as sons of Sanguinius, ready to fulfill their duty. The flaw within their blood burns hot in their veins. The red thirst claws at the edge of their minds. The black rage whispers its siren call, but still they hold, still they prepare. Beyond the fortress, the sands shift as the first of the Tyrannid spores strike the ground. The impact shakes the earth. Dust rises in great clouds, hiding the alien growths that begin to spread where the spores land. Tendrils of chitin and sinew reach out, twisting into towers and nests. The world itself seems to groan beneath the touch of the swarm. The blood angels watch as their home is remade into something unrecognizable. But they do not look away. They mark each new spore tower, each advancing wave, and they prepare their guns, their blades, their fire. The first true assault begins at dawn. The sands glow red beneath the rising suns. The Tyrannids come in waves, a tide of flesh and claw. Gaunts and warriors rush the walls, their screeches lost beneath the thunder of the fortress's guns. The defenders answer with fire, bolters roaring, plasma blazing, heavy weapons spitting death into the swarm. The air fills with the stench of burned alien flesh. The ground runs dark with ichor, but still they come. The Tyrannids do not pause, do not break. Every fallen beast is replaced by another, and another still. At the gates, the fighting turns brutal. The creatures hurl themselves against the barriers, claws rending, bodies piling high. The blood angels meet them with chainswords and power fists. The clash of steel on bone echoes across the sands. The death company surges forward, black shapes cutting through the enemy with savage fury. They are lost to the vision of Sanguinius's final battle, but they fight with purpose, as they always have. Their sacrifice buys time, their fury holds the line. Imagine the fortress walls as the sun climbs higher. The banners of the chapter snap in the dry wind. The guns never stop. The warriors never falter. Each brother fights not for himself, but for Baal, for Sanguinius, for the memory of what was and the hope of what might yet be. The chaplains move among the ranks, their voices steady, their presence a balm against the growing weight of despair. They remind their brothers that they do not fight alone, that even in the face of the great devourer, the light of the angel shines upon them. The Tyranid bioships rain death from above. Spore mines drift on the wind, bursting among the defenders. The walls shudder as bioplasma blasts strike home. Breaches form, but they are sealed with steel and blood. The Blood Angels respond with precision strikes, dreadnoughts and tanks rolling forward to meet the enemy where the line weakens. Each counterattack is a blade driven into the heart of the swarm, slowing its advance, blunting its claws. As the hours pass, the sands become a graveyard. The bodies of the fallen, both Xenos and human, litter the field. The red dust is stained darker still by blood and ichor. The heat rises, the air thick with smoke and the scent of battle, but the Blood Angels endure. They are more than warriors. They are the last shield of Baal, the final line that stands between the swarm and the heart of their world. There are moments when it seems the line will break, when the weight of the swarm becomes too great, but in those moments the Blood Angels find strength within themselves and within each other. The bond of brotherhood holds firm, the memory of Sanguinius gives them purpose. The knowledge that they stand upon the soil of their home, that their fight is for something greater than themselves, gives them the will to continue. As the sun begins to set, the fighting does not end. The Tyranids know no night, no rest. The Blood Angels hold the walls as the sky darkens. Fires burn across the horizon. The stars above are hidden by smoke and the hulks of dead ships, but within the fortress the light of faith remains. The warriors stand ready for the next wave and the next. They will stand until they can stand no longer. As this chapter draws to a close, let the image linger. The fortress of the Blood Angels, battered but unbroken. The warriors upon its walls, bloodied but defiant. The sands of Baal, stained and scarred, but still their own. The last stand has begun. The night will be long. The price will be high. But the Blood Angels will pay it gladly. For Baal, for Sanguinius, for the honor of their name. The Blood Angels had known from the start that the battle for Baal would be one of sacrifice. They had stood upon the sands with open eyes, seeing the shadow of the great devourer stretch across the stars. They had watched the swarm fall upon their world in wave after wave, and still they fought. Each brother had sworn to hold the line until the last. And yet, as the sun set and rose again, as the red sands grew darker beneath the weight of battle, even the most resolute began to feel the strain. The walls shook with the force of the Tyranid assault. The guns grew hot from endless use. The warriors grew weary, though none gave voice to doubt. The end seemed near. The Blood Angels prepared to make their final stand. Then from the blackness of space came a light that none had expected. The void above Baal, so long filled with the shapes of bioships and the fire of destruction, now burned with new fury. The guns of Imperial warships split the dark, their barrages carving paths through the swarm. The enemy faltered, caught between the defenders on the ground and this fresh storm from above. The Blood Angels lifted their eyes to the heavens and saw salvation take form. The Indomitus Crusade had come. The fleet of the Crusade moved with precision. Each ship took its place in the line. Every cannon fired with purpose. Plasma and macro shells tore into the Tyranid vessels, breaking them apart, scattering their swarms. The bioships answered with their own living weapons, hurling spore mines and bioplasma in return. The void became a sea of flame and ruin. Yet the fleet of the Imperium pressed on, unshaken. At their head was the avenging sun himself, Robute Guilliman. The Primarch had returned to the stars, and now he came to Baal, to his brothers, to the sons of Sanguinius. Picture the void above Baal as it blazed with this new battle. Imperial ships, vast and proud, clashed with the living vessels of the Tyranids. The stars, hidden for so long by the swarm, flickered through the smoke of war. The Blood Angels watched from the walls, their hearts lifting at the sight. They had stood alone for so long, facing the end without complaint. Now, they were no longer alone. The Emperor's spear had found them. Hope, long thought lost, burned anew. Guilliman's voice reached the surface through the vox, steady and calm even amid the storm. His words spoke of duty, of brotherhood, of the Imperium's strength. He did not offer empty comfort. He reminded the Blood Angels of who they were, of what they meant to the galaxy, of what their father had died to protect. His words were not loud. They did not need to be. They carried the weight of truth, and that was enough. The Blood Angels heard, and they answered in kind. They took up their weapons with renewed purpose. The Tyranids had not broken them, and now, with Guilliman at their side, they would strike back. The fleet in orbit did more than fight the bioships. It cleared paths through the swarm, opening the way for reinforcements. Dropships and gunships descended toward the surface, braving the fire of the Tyranid weapons. They brought fresh warriors, fresh guns, fresh hope. The Primaris Space Marines, new to the stars, new to Baal, came to join their brothers in the fight. They disembarked onto a world scarred by war, into a battle that burned without end. They did so without hesitation. The sons of Guilliman came not as strangers, but as allies, as kin, as the hand of the Emperor made flesh. Imagine the moment as the first of the reinforcements landed. The dust of Baal's surface rose around them. The roar of engines and guns filled the air. The Blood Angels, worn but unbowed, stood to greet them. There was no time for words, only the clash of battle, only the shared purpose that bound all sons of the Emperor. Together they turned their fury upon the Tyranids. Together they struck where the line had bent beneath the weight of the swarm. The Primaris warriors fought with skill and strength, their weapons and armor crafted for this age of darkness. The Blood Angels, veterans of 1,000 wars, fought with the precision and grace of those who had been shaped by endless trial. Side by side, they began to push the swarm back. On the ground, the tide of battle shifted. The defenders of Baal, once pressed to the edge of defeat, now advanced. Every step gained was paid for in blood, every advance marked by sacrifice. The sands of Baal, long stained, bore the mark of this renewed fury. The Death Company hurled itself into the enemy ranks, black shapes cutting a path through claw and fang. The Sanguinary Guard led charges that shattered the enemy's will. The tanks of the chapter rolled forward, guns blazing, breaking nests and spore towers apart. The Primaris lent their strength to every breach, their firepower and resolve turning the swarm's own ferocity against it. Above, the battle in space raged without pause. The Imperial fleet pressed the advantage. The Tyranid bioships, caught between the fire of orbit and the fury of the defenders below, began to falter. One by one they fell, torn apart by gunfire, consumed by plasma, broken upon the anvil of Imperial will. The void burned with their passing. The stars, long hidden, began to shine once more. The shadow of the Devourer lifted, if only in part. But it was enough. The Blood Angels felt the change. They saw the cracks in the swarm. They pressed harder, driving the Tyranids back, reclaiming what had been lost. The work was not done. The battle was far from over. But where once the end had seemed certain, now there was a path forward. The Emperor's spear had turned the tide. The sons of Sanguinius and the sons of Guilliman fought as one, and together they made the great Devourer bleed. As the sun set upon that day of battle, the Blood Angels stood upon the walls once more. The fires of war still burned. The air still carried the scent of ash and ichor. But within the hearts of the defenders there was light. The fight was not yet won. The price had been great, but Baal endured. The Blood Angels endured, and with them stood the Imperium. The Emperor's spear had found its mark. The Tyranids had been thrown back. The last stand was no longer a tale of doom. It had become a tale of defiance, of unity, of hope reborn. As this chapter closes, let the image stay with you. The warriors of the Imperium, old and new, standing together upon the sands of Baal. The void above, no longer lost to the swarm, but reclaimed through fire and will. The Blood Angels, weary but unbroken, lifting their gaze to the stars, ready for what must come next. The fires of battle had not yet faded from the skies of Baal. The ground still trembled beneath the weight of conflict. But for the first time in many days, the Blood Angels stood with their enemies pushed back. The Tyranid swarm, once so certain in its hunger, now reeled from the fury of the Imperium. The arrival of the Indomitus Crusade had changed everything. Yet the Blood Angels, though heartened, felt more than relief. They felt the weight of what was to come. Among the reinforcements sent to Baal were warriors unlike any they had seen before. These were the Primaris Space Marines. The sons of Sanguinius gathered upon the scorched sands and broken stones of their world as the Primaris disembarked. Gunships touched down upon the ruined plains outside the fortress monastery. The air filled with the hum of engines, the hiss of cooling metal, the steady thrum of order being restored after chaos. From the holds of these craft emerged warriors who bore the marks of the Adeptus Astartes, yet stood taller, broader, more imposing. Their armor was new, unscarred by centuries of battle. Their weapons gleamed in the light of Baal's twin suns. These were not recruits. They were soldiers bred for war, shaped by the hands of Archmagos Belisarius Caul, sent forth by Robute Guilliman himself. The Blood Angels watched in silence. Their armor bore the scars of countless battles, the marks of Baal's defense etched into every plate and pauldron. The Primaris, by contrast, seemed untouched by loss. They moved with precision, their discipline clear, but their eyes, though sharp, lacked the deep sorrow that filled the gaze of the firstborn. For the sons of Sanguinius, the meeting was a moment of reflection as much as renewal. These new brothers were a gift, a promise of strength, but they were also a reminder of what the Blood Angels had lost and what they might yet become. Picture the moment as the two lines of warriors stood facing one another. The red sands of Baal spread wide around them. The fortress rose behind, battered but unbroken. The banners of the chapter fluttered in the wind, torn but still proud. The Primaris stood in perfect order, their weapons at rest, their eyes forward. The Blood Angels, weary from days of endless battle, stood with heads high, their hands resting upon the hilts of blades that had slain the enemies of mankind for centuries. The gap between them was more than space. It was time, history, sorrow, and hope woven together. Guilliman addressed both lines, his voice calm, steady, and clear. He spoke of the future, of the need for unity in this age of darkness. He spoke of the debt the Imperium owed to the Blood Angels for their valor at Baal, and of the purpose the Primaris would serve in ensuring the chapter's survival. His words were measured, chosen to bridge the divide between the old and the new. The Blood Angels listened, and though they gave no sign, they felt the weight of his truth. The Primaris were not a replacement. They were a shield offered in the galaxy's darkest hour. For the Primaris, Baal was a world of legend. They had trained for war, they had fought in the battles of the Indomitus Crusade, but Baal was something different. It was the heart of the Blood Angels' legacy, a place where duty and sacrifice lived in every stone and grain of sand. As they marched through the ruined gates, as they took their place within the fortress monastery's walls, they came to understand this truth. The Blood Angels were not defined by their victories alone, they were defined by what they had endured. The integration of the Primaris was not simple. The Blood Angels, though grateful, felt the tension that comes with change. The Primaris were untouched by the black rage and the red thirst. They bore the same gene seed, crafted with care, purified through the work of Caul and the will of Guilliman. Yet they did not carry the flaw that haunted every firstborn brother. For the veterans of Baal, this was a point of both relief and sorrow. The flaw had shaped them. It had bound them in brotherhood. To see warriors who did not share that burden was to be reminded of what they could never escape. Imagine the fortress in the days that followed. The Primaris trained alongside the firstborn, learning the rites and customs of the chapter, taking up the red armor of the Blood Angels, standing beneath the statues of Sanguinius that lined the halls. The chaplains led them through the rituals of remembrance, through the oaths of service, through the prayers offered to the Emperor and the Angel. The Primaris listened, observed, and gave their vow, yet the distance remained. The firstborn saw in them the future. The Primaris saw in the firstborn the weight of history. Both sides knew the bond would take time to forge. The work of rebuilding began in earnest. The Primaris lent their strength to this task as they had to the battle. Towers were raised again from ruin, the walls repaired where they had been breached. The sands cleared of the detritus of war, the nests and growths of the Tyranids burned away, their taint purged by flame and faith. The Primaris learned the ways of Baal's soil, of its storms and its silences, of the spirit that filled its every corner. The firstborn in turn began to see these new brothers not as strangers but as warriors who shared their purpose, their duty, and in time, their sorrow. The Death Company watched in silence. The black-armored brothers who bore the mark of the Black Rage felt the stir of the curse as they always had. The Primaris, untouched by it, walked among them without the burden of that vision. Yet even the Death Company saw that these new warriors stood ready to face the galaxy's foes. They too would bleed for Baal. They too would honor the memory of Sanguinius. Guilliman's words echoed through the fortress in those days. He spoke of unity not as a gift, but as a task. The Blood Angels took his meaning to heart. They welcomed the Primaris not because they were told to, but because duty demanded it. The chapter would endure, the chapter would rise. Old blood and new would stand as one, and together they would face what came next. Picture the final moments of this chapter. The fortress stands tall once more, its banners flying proud beneath Baal's twin sons. The Blood Angels, firstborn and Primaris, stand upon its walls, their gaze turned to the horizon. The stars above are clear again, the smoke of battle lifted. The Tyranid threat is broken, but the work of rebuilding, of healing, has only begun. The Blood Angels know that they have survived, but they also know that survival is not enough. They must honor the fallen, they must protect what remains, they must forge a future worthy of the price that has been paid. The Primaris are part of that future. The Blood Angels accept them not as replacements, but as brothers. The bond will deepen with time. The battles ahead will see it tested and proven. Together they will guard Baal. Together they will bear the legacy of Sanguinius. The coming of the Primaris marks not an end, but a beginning, a new chapter in a story written in blood, sorrow, and hope. The Tyranid swarm had been broken, but Baal was far from saved. The sands that once stretched untouched now bore deep wounds. Strange growths covered the land. Fungal blooms and alien structures had taken root where the Tyranids had passed. The air hung thick with the scent of decay. The battle was won, but the work of cleansing had only begun. The Blood Angels, joined by the Primaris, spread across the surface of their world. Together they sought out the last remnants of the alien plague. Each ruined spire, each nest of writhing Tyranid flesh was burned away. Purity flame and plasma cleansers swept through the corrupted places. The Blood Angels fought as they always had, with precision and care. They moved not in haste, but with a steady purpose. Baal was theirs. They would take it back piece by piece. Picture the process as it unfolded. Squads moved through canyons where once only sand and wind had dwelled. Now they found Tyranid spore towers, half-living things that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. These were brought down with melters and charges. The land groaned as the last of the Tyranid corruption was torn from it. The cleansing was not just of the land. Within the halls of the fortress monastery, the Blood Angels honored the fallen. The names of those who had died were carved into the stones of remembrance. Their armor was cleaned, their weapons set upon altars. The chaplains led quiet rites. There was no grand victory celebration. The mood was solemn, as befitted a chapter that had looked into the heart of darkness and survived. The Primaris stood alongside the firstborn in these rites. There was no division in this. The bloodshed on Baal's sands had bound them as brothers. The work of reclaiming their home became the work of shaping their future. The Primaris, new to Baal's soil, came to understand the weight of the world they now served. They saw in the Blood Angels not just warriors, but a chapter that had given all to hold this place. They too felt the duty to see Baal made whole again. The moons above Baal remained scarred. Their surfaces bore the marks of the Tyranid advance. Baal Secundus in particular was changed beyond easy repair. But the Blood Angels did not turn from this task. They would rebuild, they would restore what could be restored. In time, the moons would serve once more as places of trial and training. As we end this chapter, let your thoughts stay with the image of Baal as it heals. The blood angels walk its sands, weapons lowered, their work far from done. But for the first time in many days, they see a future where hope might yet grow. The battle for Baal had ended, but the echoes of war remained. The twin suns rose over sands that had seen much sorrow. The blood angels stood upon the land they had saved. Their armor bore the marks of battle. Their banners, though torn, still flew. The cost had been great, yet in the light of dawn there was the quiet promise of renewal. Baal lived. The blood angels lived. And with them, the hope of redemption endured. In the quiet that followed, the blood angels reflected on all they had endured. The tyrannid swarm had sought to end them. The flaw within their blood had threatened to undo them. Yet they had held true. They had fought with all they were, and in doing so had honored Sanguinius. The chapter had faced the edge of extinction, but had not fallen. They had been tempered in the fire, and now stood stronger for it. Picture the sands of Baal beneath the first full light of day. The winds carried the scent of ash, but also the clean air that comes after the storm. The fortress monastery cast long shadows, but its gates stood open. The blood angels gathered upon the parade ground, joined by their Primaris brothers. Together they looked to the horizon, where the future waited. The past had been written in blood, but the next chapter was theirs to shape. Guilliman's words stayed with them. He had not promised ease. He had spoken of duty, of sacrifice, and of the road ahead. The blood angels understood this well. Their fight would never truly end. The flaw still lived within them. The enemies of mankind would return, as they always did. But in that moment, beneath the rising suns, the blood angels knew they had reclaimed more than their home. They had reclaimed their purpose. They had proven to themselves that even in the face of despair, they could rise. The Primaris stood as part of this future. No longer strangers, they had earned their place in the chapter's history. Together, old and new would face what came next. The scars on Baal's surface would heal in time. So too would the scars upon the hearts of its defenders. The blood angels would endure. They would rise each dawn, ready to serve, ready to protect, ready to seek redemption in every act of valor. As this tale closes, let your mind rest upon the image of Baal's sands touched by morning light. The blood angels, their duty renewed, stand watch over their world. The galaxy remains dark. The foes of mankind still gather beyond the stars, but on Baal, for a time, there is peace, and in that peace there is the strength to face the next storm.